Virginia's house didn't seem like it was capable of holding all the people that were gathered inside of it. There was no music, but the house was loud with conversation as Virginia dragged me downstairs and into the kitchen. Her mother had laid out nothing less than a feast, putting a different dish on seemingly every available surface. "This is my favorite part," Virginia says as she leads me through the house, sampling each dish as we go along. At the corner of my eye, I can see a few people that I recognize, mostly seniors that had since graduated. There is Pastel, whose bright fairy wings were difficult to miss. I also recognize Balthazar, carrying on a conversation in the corner with an older gentleman who looked to be around Hieronymous's age. But as I turn to follow Virginia, I notice that she has moved on without me. "Virginia?" I ask, but I suddenly can't find her anywhere in the crowd. "Virginia!" "There you are, Tori." I feel Jenny's arm latch onto mine from out of nowhere, and she quickly begins pulling me from room to room until we end up in a sunroom located somewhere near the front of the house. I don't recognize anyone in the room. All of them look much older than I am, and they all glance at me as I walk in. "Here she is," Jenny says, as if presenting me to an audience. "This is Tori Brown Grabiner." She takes a seat, leaving me to stand awkwardly near the doorway. "Here, sit." A middle-aged woman ushers me into a seat, and I can't help but notice it's placed almost directly in the center of the room. Regardless, I sit down, trying not to seem too awkward. "So, this is Grabiner's wife, eh?" I overhear one of the men ask another. "Interesting. She doesn't look at all like I pictured." I can't help but flush, and I'm just about to get up and try to find Virginia again when Jenny speaks up. "So, Tori, tell us about Iris Academy, How'd you like it there?" "It's fine," I say. They seem to be waiting for me to continue, but I don't know what else they want me to say. "It's a very pretty campus. The teachers are nice, and the classes are good. I feel I've learned a lot there." "And you're a wild seed, correct?" a man asks from somewhere off to my right. Yes, I stammer as I attempt to identify who asked me the question. "And Virginia tells me you were picked to be treasurer," Jenny continues, "for 2 years now. You must have quite the smarts." I don't know," I say as I shrug awkwardly. It's mostly about fundraisers and making sure to secure funding for our school events. Like, once a year we go to the mall around Thanksgiving and sell holiday candles to help raise funds for... "You hear that?" a man snorts. "Potsdam has them out and about in the community, collecting money from non-magical folk." "But that's the way it's supposed to be done," I say, vaguely recalling the lecture that Potsdam had given us about the tradition. I couldn't remember most of it now, and I wasn't going to say more when I couldn't remember what she had said, but I distinctly remember that it was tradition to have the non-magical folk pay as reparations for the injustice that we had experienced when magical settlers first arrived in America. "How'd you like Potsdam?" a woman asked. "What'd you think of her?" "I think she's nice," I say with a shrug of my shoulders. "She always seems friendly around everyone. She teaches a lot of green, white, and black magic classes, especially for the freshmen. She likes it when students ask questions and take initiative in learning themselves. And she also likes to use her students as bait and read their diaries without their permission. She was the one who married you and Grabiner, isn't that correct?" I can't tell where the voice was coming from, if it was male or female, but they're looking at me expectantly. "That is true," I say simply, volunteering no more information than that. "You see," someone asks, "teachers experimenting with dangerous spells in classrooms. Potsdam trying to cover the whole thing up. And the thing last year in the gym, who knows what's really going on at that school." "You have a unique perspective to share," Jenny says as she turns back to me. "What do you think, Tori? Do you feel safe at Iris? Does Potsdam make you feel safe there?" I feel my ears burning hot. Did they know I was involved with the incident at the gym? Virginia must have told her mom everything, and then her mom told all of these people. Who were who, exactly? Members of the magical community, of course, but I didn't know who they were. I knew they seemed to dislike Potsdam a great deal. I hadn't ever really given much thought to the fact that there was some who might wish to see Potsdam removed from her position, but obviously the magical community was just as politically divided as the non-magical one. That's a good question, I say, trying to think of a way Hieronymous would answer the question. What do you think? As a parent, given from what you've heard, do you have any reservations about sending your children there? There was awkward silence and shuffling. It was clear they wanted to use something I said as possible leverage against Potsdam, but I wasn't going to give them anything. If anything, I almost wished Hieronymous had warned me about this possible line of inquiry, although perhaps even he wasn't aware of it. How involved was Hieronymous in the magical community? It seemed that he had left all of that behind him, and yet he probably knew more than I was aware of. It looks like you get your feist from Professor Grabiner, don't you, girl? Someone asks to my left, but I'm not sure who. I doubt it would have mattered. I didn't recognize any of these people anyway. Some might have been parents of my peers, but it wasn't like I wasn't already the pariah of the school. Not really, I reply as I shake my head. I'm not going to pretend that you haven't heard rumors of some of his unorthodox teaching methods, and true, he can be a little intense at times, but it's only because he wants students to listen and learn. Some teachers believe that you can catch more flies with honey than with vinegar. Some teachers believe in scaring students straight so they don't abuse their magic early on and fizzle out. Not everyone is going to agree with his approach, but then again, not everyone learns the same way, do they? Hear, hear, someone echoes, and for some reason this pulls a smile to my lips. At least it seemed that I had won the favor of at least one person in this room. How is Professor Grabiner doing? Someone asks, not altogether unkindly. He's been in that position for over a decade. Rumor has it he's next in line for Potsdam's job if we can get that old witch out of it. I try my best to conceal my surprise. There were people who wanted Hieronymous to become the new head of Iris Academy? But what about his seat in England? Was that why his father had suddenly reached out to him to try to get him to continue the family line? Better yet, how much of this did Hieronymous know? How much of this was I unaware of? I can honestly say I've heard nothing of those rumors. If Hieronymous wants to become the headmaster of Iris Academy, then that's something that he hasn't shared with me. I'm sure you all know that he has many doors open to him, and considering that I graduate in 2 years, we're planning on thoroughly examining each option to decide how best to proceed. So you do plan on staying with him then? A woman sounds appalled, and I do my best to try to conceal a smirk. I do, I reply, making sure to keep my voice even. Although it's true that I'm a bit younger than he is, we actually have a lot of common interests. I'm sure, a man snorts. It's hard to overcome the allure of being married into a noble bloodline, isn't it? The face of repulsion I make is genuine. I didn't know anything about that, and I still don't. I'm sure you know that Hieronymous already left that all behind him years ago. If you heard otherwise, it's not going to be for me. I put my hands on my knees as I turn back to face Jenny. I should see where Virginia's gotten off to. She must be looking for me. Excuse me. Jenny stammers, but I'm already out the door. Part of me wants to leave immediately, or at least hole up in my room for the rest of my stay here. Jenny had dragged me out like a lamb for the slaughter, but at the same time, I almost didn't blame her. From the way some of those older men were dressed, they must have had a fair bit of influence, and I could imagine someone in her position simply submitting to their request for an inquisition. Suddenly, I feel a gentle probing in the back of my mind, and I close my eyes as I open myself up to it. Was it Hieronymous, sensing something was wrong? Was it Virginia, looking to see where I had gone off to? Meet me in the garden out back, a voice says. I'm not able to place it, but maybe it's Donald. I haven't heard his voice in my head before, so maybe I just didn't recognize the inflection. Since I'm near the front of the house, I scoot out the front door and head around to the side of the house, feeling sufficiently awkward as I creep through their darkly lit lawn. As I approach the back of the house, though, there's nothing out there except for a large greenhouse set a little ways behind the house. I smirk to myself. Figures that the parents would be having their own party in the house, and we'd have our own little celebration out here. As I open up the door to the greenhouse, however, it immediately strikes me that something is wrong. There doesn't look to be anyone in here. That is, until a man decides to uncloak himself directly in front of me. Well, hello again, Tori. It takes a moment to get my mouth to work, but when it does, my voice is full of venom. Aloysius.